wants to get slapped. Your mother sucks dwarf.
Hello there, my RPG lovers, and welcome to another video. Witcher games don't require some special introduction. Even if you never played one of the 3 Witcher games, you probably still heard of this series in one way or another. It's been more than 4 years since the last Witcher game got released, and almost 12 since the first game came out. I want to talk about the first Witcher game and how it changed my gamer perspective in a way. Before we continue, consider subscribing for more RPG content because that's what I'm all about. Even today, after the major success of The Witcher 3, the first game in this series is mostly overlooked, if not completely ignored by most people. It's not that hard to see why a modern gamer would have problems with this old game, and I'm not talking about the graphics. Actually, that's the last thing I would list here as an example, and I'll explain why later. The gameplay in Witcher 1 was okay at best. It served its purpose, but I think that CD Projekt Red was not sure how to approach the gameplay, so they ended up implementing 2 different ways of controlling Geralt. It might not seem like a big deal, but it actually is. Since The Witcher was always intended to be an isometric game, like we could see in the first demo, the OTS camera was probably an afterthought. It really changes how you experience the game, and even though I think that isometric view is superior from the gameplay perspective, the OTS, which is short for over the shoulder, is far more immersive. And that's hands down the most important thing in The Witcher 1. Of course, you can't have immersion without a good story, and I'll say that in my opinion, the first game had the best story in the series. Wait, don't shoot me please, let me explain. While it certainly didn't have nowhere near the presentation of The Witcher 3, or The Witcher 2 for that matter, when you finish the game you're left with just wow. That was unexpected and really impactful. I won't spoil anything here, don't worry. I'm obviously not saying that the story in Witcher 2 and 3 are bad. Far from that actually. I just think that the first game had the best story and it's worth playing for that reason alone. When you hear something like that, I think you would hardly believe me if I tell you that I gave up on this game twice in the middle of the playthrough. I wasn't feeling the gameplay, didn't pay that much attention to the story, and this was still the original version of the game with lots of problems, so that also made the game much worse. When I was totally bored again and I didn't know what to play, I tried it again. And once I finished the second chapter, I was completely hooked on the story. I just wanted to see what happens next, and to be honest, Geralt started to grow on me.
Fuck you.
This might not be the game's problem. I'm not saying that the first 2 chapters are bad, but like I said, I didn't like the gameplay like at all. And this was a huge problem for me simply because I played games almost only for the gameplay back then. I was still new to the idea of immersive storytelling in games. So that's one of the reasons why this game changed my way of thinking when it comes to role-playing games or just games in general. After this game, I started paying attention to the story in other games. It maybe sounds funny, but I come from the place where almost everyone plays first-person games, Dota, or maybe some GTA in between. And I was also like this until I started playing some RPGs. Even though The Witcher 1 wasn't my first RPG, it was definitely the first role-playing game that I could play only for the story. Granted, the delivery of the story was not so good. There was one more thing that really helped to immerse me into this game, and that's the atmosphere. Walking around outskirts of Vizima at night was just an amazing experience. The first Witcher game was much darker, and it had a strong horror vibe at times, which really fits the theme of the game when you think of it. And even though the sequels had much more vibrant colors with superior graphics, they just couldn't replicate the same atmosphere of the first game. Probably because CD Projekt Red didn't really want to focus on that, they just wanted to improve the sequel in every way possible, which they did. Especially the storytelling and the presentation, and of course the gameplay. I'm not saying that the atmosphere in The Witcher 2 and 3 are bad, those games have their own thing of course, but it's definitely not the same experience. This problem, if you will, is not only related to The Witcher. Older games in general could create a strong atmosphere, and despite the unrealistic and outdated graphics, the sense of immersion was still there. For example, I think that Diablo 2 had way better atmosphere than Diablo 3. That's why the graphics are not the only thing that will keep me immersed in a game. It really depends on the game though, we could debate about this all day. But yeah, the atmosphere in Witcher 1 certainly made the story more impactful because it pulled you into this world and it didn't let go. Considering the amount of resources that CD Projekt Red had and little to no experience of making games, The Witcher 1 turned out great. It definitely deserves a special place in gaming history, not only because it opened the door for the amazing sequels, but because it had its own unique qualities, despite all the problems. I hope you enjoyed this short little story about my experience with the first Witcher game, and if you did, press the thumbs up button and subscribe for more RPG content. I do in-depth guides, news and reviews. Special thanks to my patrons, and if you as well want to become one, all the links are in the description. See ya in the next one.